係乜嘢令到香港與別不同呢？係我哋互相尊重、團結，而擁抱多元文化嘅特質。香港家書係一個關於多元文化同身份認同嘅非牟利計劃。我哋訪問來自每一個國家，但係以香港為家嘅人，聆聽佢哋一個又一個動人嘅故事。然後我哋再為每一個被訪者影低具代表性嘅相片。結集成為呢個關於香港嘅故事。我哋想同你分享佢哋嘅經歷，所以出版咗呢本雙語相冊，講述80個異鄉香港人充滿啟發性嘅人生，佢哋努力生活，為香港作出貢獻。我哋希望藉此提倡多元文化，並且聯繫唔同嘅族群。請支持我哋加入香港家書。
Hello. Can you hear well? Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome here. Everybody that's watching us live and everybody that came to the theater tonight. Thank you so much. We are Dear Hong Kong. Some of you know about our project. We're going to do a brief introduction to what the project is about, and then we're going to introduce our guest tonight. Due to social distancing, we cannot have everybody here in the audience, but we really thank the people that made it. Well, Dear Hong Kong is a project about diversity in Hong Kong. We started what started as a personal project. It grew into a group project of so many volunteers. We have a few of them here in the audience and also watching online, and then it grew into a community of people that are resonating with this message of cultural diversity. Our purpose is to kind of make Hong Kong a better place to be, with trying to spread this message of cultural diversity to make a more inclusive and tolerant society. So that's our goal, by sharing these stories of very inspiring people from every country in the world.
So also I would like to thank everyone for coming, especially I see a lot of volunteers and who we call heroes in the book, which are interviewees. So we have Phyllis and Ashmal and also Devi on stage later to share about some of the insights and their experience with us. And also I think that is kind of like a miracle for us, like during the past 2 years, for us, for like more than 50 volunteers doing this project together to publish a book and spread positivity and unity. So like, thank you everyone. Thank you for people who are zooming in and joining us, and some people who are overseas as well, for helping us in like different stage when we are developing this book and also the project.
Let's invite Bradley and Olivier. I mean, we want to invite everybody to the. Please come to the stage. We want to invite all of the volunteers because everybody is very, very special. But I mean, we have been working together with all of them for different things. We call them angels because whenever we had a need, we started the project. We didn't know much about what we were getting into, and suddenly they appeared at the right time to do a beautiful job. So Bradley, if you want to say something about the photos that you took, and Olivier, if you want to say something about this beautiful design of the book that we had.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in and here and online. Yeah, I just was watching the slideshow for the first time that I've seen that one, and there were some really lovely faces. It was wonderful to see some of the people that we shot out there in the world with our cameras, and these guys went and worked really, really hard to get everyone's stories through the interviews. And I just wanted to say what a pleasure and sort of an honor it was to work with you guys, to do all this and to meet you guys and to take your picture as well. And so, yeah, so just really thankful that everyone could be here for this book launch. And yeah, we'll see how it goes tonight. Olivier.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. So I was in charge of the design of the book, and it's been a great project to work on and to meet so many people. And my main objective really was to make it as colorful as the stories are and as Hong Kong is. So yeah, I hope I did well.
It's interesting the familiarity that we had with the interviews with our heroes. So I was talking to Olivia just now and said, "Oh, Indonesia, it's Devi." So we know all of your stories because of working on the book. Thank you so much, guys. We're going to invite Devi, that is our representative from Indonesia, that is going to moderate a little bit the talk with Ashmal, that is our representative from Pakistan, and with Phyllis, that is our representative from the USA.
Thank you, Oscar. Congratulations for the team of Dear Hong Kong. It's such a beautiful book. And thank you everyone for coming, and especially Asia Society for hosting this event, and especially for Ajmal and Phyllis. I read your story, and so inspiring. So I want to ask more questions, if you don't mind. So what makes Hong Kong home for you? Phyllis, do you want to start first?
So we were talking before this started, and we were talking about why is Hong Kong home? And I think Hong Kong becomes home when you let it be your home, when you get involved in the community, when you fix your home so it feels like home to you and not a hotel, and you make your friends. When I came to Hong Kong, I didn't know anybody, not a soul. I knew one person. And then I started having children and no relatives to help me. I had my first 6 children in 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I had 7 children in the end. But I made our friends, their aunts and uncles.
Right.
And to this day, our friends at that time when I was newly married and having kids are still like aunts and uncles to my kids. And I think it was going the extra mile to make friends.
I totally resonate with you. I will tell you my story later. Ajmal, what makes Hong Kong's home for you?
So, thank you very much, Devi. So, I'm going to maybe tie myself with the book a little bit.
Okay.
And because these are individual stories of different people which Oscar has interviewed and Eggy's interviewed in Hong Kong. So, I have my own story, which began and why I call Hong Kong home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from my point of view, the way I look at it, it's been 28 years now I've been in Hong Kong, and when I came to Hong Kong, I would have never imagined that I would actually call Hong Kong home. And again, a story like everybody else, a lot of people who come to, not everybody, a lot of people who come to Hong Kong, it was a story which started off with not making Hong Kong home, but just as a transient place. A place to go, and in my case, it was searching for what am I going to do next in my life. I think that's also a story of many people who come to Hong Kong. And eventually, initially coming to Hong Kong, me being in a wheelchair and me being not from the right place at that time in Hong Kong. So I was faced with a lot of challenges, a lot of disappointments. And I think that's what made my story in Hong Kong, challenges and disappointments. And strangely enough, or I would say oddly enough, actually that's what made Hong Kong my home. Because I was given, I think I've had practically all known challenges and disappointments which I have faced in Hong Kong. And that's really what made me choose Hong Kong as a home, because I continued to get over another challenge, another disappointment. And eventually it came to a point that there was no way to look back. And that's what gave me the belonging into Hong Kong. And that's what made me discover that this is a place which really has made me today, 28 years now. And that's who I am today. And that's actually why I chose, actually Hong Kong chose me in a way, or I chose Hong Kong through all those challenges, and these two go together. And that's why, if your question about why I chose Hong Kong as a home, and I think that's my story. That's what I relate to.
And I think thank you, Ajmal. I think you're very right. A lot of people, probably come to Hong Kong with the thought, like, maybe I just stay for a year. Show hands if you are coming to Hong Kong and thinking, I will just be here for a year or two. Okay, so, and how many of you that been stay here for more than 5 years? Okay, so 1 become 5. Yeah, so I agree. I experienced the same way. In the beginning, it's quite hard. As Phyllis mentions, I remember when people ask me, like, Davy, how long you been staying in Hong Kong? And I just 1 year, 3 months, and 2 weeks, because I come to Hong Kong without knowing anyone. So it's the sense of isolations and as you said, making a friend. So talking about making a friend, I'm sure when you come to Hong Kong, Ajmal, how many years? 25 years? 28 years to come to Hong Kong, and you are about 47 years. How easy or difficult it is to make friends at that time? Because I remember, in a certain area, when I walk in Hong Kong, people kind of stare at me, do not know how to put me, so how was it for you?
I think it was relatively easy for me because I had children, so you meet other parents of children.
Mm-hmm.
I went to church, so I had a lot of church friends. I played tennis, so I had a lot of tennis friends. And I think that, I had a variety of and I entertained at home a lot, so that people would get to know me and my family. So that's what I did.
So you take the initiative to bring
Yes.
people into your environment.
Yes.
What about you,
Yes.
Ajmal?
I think, again, initially for me, Hong Kong, as I mentioned earlier, it was a tough place. It was a tough going. So I was so focused on making sure that I get over those hurdles and challenges in my life that I didn't have much time to actually extend my social circles and make friends. But it also happens in Hong Kong that once you get to a point, like you mentioned, 1 year turns into 2 years, 5 years, and after that you really become part of Hong Kong. It also happened to me that after some time, when I started getting to know and expanding my circles and my work, where I started having some time, then I saw suddenly, and I'm involved in sports also, so from that angle as well. So I saw that suddenly there were I started making a lot of friends, and then it just sort of became out of control, and I had too many friends in Hong Kong.
There's never too many friends,
No,
Ajmal.
it's just happened because I have so many different
Event invitations.
No, I have so many different facets. I'm involved with sports, I'm involved with business, I'm involved with this and that and endurance things and so many things. So eventually I had to say, okay, what is my life curtail? And I have friends, interestingly enough, because of the different type of engagements and different type of things I'm involved with, I have friends from practically every status of society in Hong Kong, which is, I like it. I like it that way. And I think that's another beauty of Hong Kong, because once you get to know the people, it's just one of the hurdles. Once you really get to know the people, once you get over that hurdle, it's a very welcoming place.
Yes.
But initially, it's a very intimidating place. Yeah, so
Yes.
that was my experience, how
I totally agree with you. Thank you for sharing that. Now you mentioned Ajmal. This is my follow-up questions for you. I will give an opportunity for you to ask questions. So, if you think of some questions, please keep it. Ajmal, another question for you is that you mentioned that you're involved in a lot of endurance sports and things like that, and you go through different disappointment and rejection. So, what makes you? This is not my story and I am going to show up. So what is it? What motivates you to get up every morning and just like, it doesn't matter, the 10,000 rejections, whatever, I'm up for it?
Yeah, I think, of course, if I would just say that it happened overnight, it would be wrong to say something, but it's just accumulation of a lot of these experiences and accumulation of a lot of these disappointments and challenges which I faced in life. But at the same time, this sort of built that resilience and built that endurance in me and built that sort of determination, gave me the determination that whatever happens, whatever comes my way, I have to take it. And because at the end of the day, what I had proven to myself, most importantly, of course, to the larger community around me as well, but most importantly to myself, was that I have done it. I have actually gotten to that point where I have sustained myself, I have lived, and I've become successful in Hong Kong. Yeah, it was 28 years. I'm sitting here talking to you now, okay? But I have done it. I have gotten to that point where I made myself successful in Hong Kong. So when I do all these challenges you're talking about, the crazy things, the endurance stuff and all that, of course, it's a matter of that resilience which you built in, which sort of comes as a second nature, and also that facing that adversity and learning from adversity and facing the disappointments and challenges and learning from, and then say, okay, I can't stop. I have to finish it. I have to do whatever I started. And I think it's not easy to explain, but these are some of the things which I think I have learned from Hong Kong, and Hong Kong has taught me as well how to. It's a very Hong Kong thing, Again, it's a very Hong Kong. You never give up.
Okay.
You have to continue.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. That the way you actually show up and the way you actually join a lot of things, adventure, getting a Rick Hanson's award. That's amazing, Ajmal. So let me move to Phyllis. Phyllis, you start Mother Choice 34 years ago, and you're being a mom of 7 children, and being a teacher at that time. So how do you grow this Mother Choice, become the amazing organization that we know now, and what some of the challenges that you experienced when you set up the Mother Choice?
Yeah. Well, it comes back to friends again. But I really, every time I talk, I love to give credit to my parents. My mom and dad really had hospitality. They really, we worked with diversity. My father worked with the poor. They worked hard. They also had 7 children. So we learned to give and take. So one day I got a call from my friend who was volunteering in the refugee camps at that time. And she said, "You need to come to my house and see me this morning." And I said, okay. I thought something might be wrong. So I arrived at her house, and she showed me the South China Morning Post that had an article about the number of girls going across the border into China for late-term abortions. And she said, read the article. So I read it, and in my head, I'm thinking, what does that have to do with me? And what could I ever do about it? And then she proceeded to tell me her family story about her. She came from a very conservative family. There were 3 children, a brother and a sister, and she was the youngest. Her sister, who was in high school, I think maybe the 10th or 11th grade, came home one day and said to her parents, "Can I talk to you?" And she said, "We didn't do that with our parents." I knew something was wrong. And they stayed in the room until she finally went and got her own dinner and went to bed. When she woke up in the morning, her sister was gone. She was gone for over a year. Her parents never mentioned her name, never said what had happened. And my friend was worried all this time and didn't dare ask her parents what the matter was. About a year later, her sister comes back. Her parents are shut down, and her sister goes up to the room. So she said, I waited till about midnight when I knew everybody would be asleep, and I went in and I said, where were you? What happened to you? And she said, I had a baby. And she said, they took the baby away from me, and I never got to see my baby. And the sad ending of that story is that her sister died within 6 months because she had been refusing to eat. So my friend said to me, there must be girls that would not choose this, that do not have a choice, and we need to do something about it. And I said, okay, let's do it. It wasn't really something I came to Hong Kong to do, but it was taking the risk and asking the question, what can I do? Not, I'm going to give you advice, or these poor girls, or whatever, but what can I do? And we decided to get ourselves in the newspaper the next day. And we said we're a group of people. There were 2 couples with no money and lots of children. And we said there's a group of people who want to help pregnant girls. And we had our first client at 9 o'clock the next morning. From a call from a nurse in the hospital saying, this young girl is here. She's very pregnant. She can't stay here. She won't talk. She's ready to give birth, but she can't stay in the hospital. Would you come and get her? And we had our first client. And by the way, she had her baby in my friend's home the next day. So I went from thinking, where am I going to find a pregnant girl that needs help? And into thinking, oh boy, we've got a girl. And the next day it's like, oh, we have a baby. What are we going to do? And then we started looking into adoption and finding out that adoption was very rare at that time. So that was the beginning. And it was just, I say it's either stupidity or being brave and being wanting to take a risk. But that was the beginning of this long journey.
That's very touching. I mean, like starting something that's really big and huge responsibility just for, the bravery and the courage of wanting to do and to help others. I think that's very, very brave and very courageous. And I'm sure a lot of people in Hong Kong feel grateful that you actually take that step and set up Mother Choice.
The surprise is that the more you give, the more you get.
That's true.
I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the more you give to those around you, and you can make a difference. I'm a good example of somebody that's totally not prepared or worthy of doing what I do, but everybody in their own way can make a difference. That's my biggest lesson.
I think that's the quotes times, right? Everybody can make a difference in the life. Okay, so before I continue with my questions, is there any questions from the audience and or from the Zoom or Facebook Live? Do we have any questions from the floor? No? Okay, I have my own other questions then. So, Ajmal, I know you actually involved in making a Hong Kong Standard Charter Marathon to open for, para athlete. How do you think the scene in Hong Kong, are we inclusive enough in terms of our sports, our facility in embracing people with disability, people with different ability to participate? And what do you see the shortcoming?
So actually, when it comes to Hong Kong, when we talk about para sports or disabled sports, Hong Kong is a world-class place for disabled sports. So you have everything, you name it. It's available and the sports are there. But the big disparity, or when you talk about inclusion, or it comes to the general population. So the elite athletes who can take part, para-athletes who can take part in all the sports, and they can represent. I represent Hong Kong in rowing, yeah, And there are other athletes who do that as well, who are disabled athletes, but they are on the world-class level. Okay. But when you talk about an average person, disabled person, or average differently able person, there's a long, long, long way to go. And I think there are many, many deep-seated issues about that, the cultural issues, society, how we treat people, how people sort of treat their own disability, or how the society treats their disability. I think that's the areas which is still a long way to go. So if you mentioned about Standard Chartered Marathon, yes, I was, for some reason, when I wanted to take part in marathons, I could not, because there was no category for disabled athletes. And that's where I started lobbying, and eventually I was successful. But at the same time, another big issue I found that actually on the grassroots level, or an average disabled person, there's still a long way to go. They are not ready to actually participate in these type of endurance races or endurance athletics sports events. I think that's where the gap need to be still worked upon, and there's a lot of room for changes to happen and some improvements to be made. Yeah.
So, follow up on that, Ajmal. So, what do you think Hong Kong general populations can do to make things happen, or to close the gap so that we become more inclusive society in terms of race, or in terms of people with different ability?
Yeah, so actually, this is something I tell many people, the onus is not on the people who are, of course it is on us as well. I speak more for myself. It's on the people who are in this situation like me. We need to strive a lot more than other people to make sure that our voices are heard and we do things which are different. But at the same time, there's a huge amount of responsibility on average person in Hong Kong, whereby they start understanding, that's a society at large in Hong Kong, they start understanding that a disabled person is not something unique. Okay, it's not somebody who has to be treated differently, and that's, I think, a very fundamental and very, very basic thing which still needs to come into the minds of the people in Hong Kong. Although I have to say, when I came to Hong Kong 28 years ago, I was a novelty on the road. A guy in a wheelchair. It doesn't happen. Okay, 28 years ago. I was going for work and all that. People used to look at me, what is this guy doing in a wheelchair? But today, if you go out on the road, you will actually inadvertently, if you go to MTR or whatever, you'll see there are so many people, you run into them. It's sort of becoming a second nature for people to accept them. So it's slowly happening, but I think it's still a long way to go.
I think I agree that visibility is actually important, and for us to be able to not, like it's part of the second nature, so thank you for doing all these things to make sure that, to change Hong Kong slowly, bit by bit.
Yeah, so I can say something here, which I've been in Hong Kong 28 years, I've mentioned a couple of times. And I think I also sort of said that Hong Kong made me, and Hong Kong chose me, and I chose Hong Kong. It was sort of a mutual understanding and a mutual relationship till today. And today, home is Hong Kong when it comes to. And it's also an important message to give that all what Hong Kong built me to who I am today. And it's going to be, I think it's almost impossible to say that I'm going to pay back. It's very difficult to say that the payback is not that easy for me. So all these things which I am doing in Hong Kong, I think that's something which I'm making sure that the place which built me, I need to give back to that place as well.
The way that you contribute back to Hong Kong society. Thanks, Ajmal. And let me go back to Phyllis. What about you, Phyllis? What about mother choice? For 34 years, I'm sure there will be lots of teen pregnancy that goes through mother choice, and a lot of babies that you help as well. What is the most, except the part that you decided to set up the mother choice, what the most touching story that you have through mother choice? Can you share any?
Oh boy, that's hard to think of. I mean, there are so many. It's hard to think of. I would say something recent that happened, which was in February. We had a big problem because we couldn't get any diapers. Our supplier, for some reason, said they couldn't give us any diapers, and we only had a 2 weeks supply. My daughter Alia, who's the CEO of Mother's Choice, went on social media and said, "We are going to run out of diapers, and can you help us?" The next day, we had to have our staff 24 hours answering the phone. There were truckloads of diapers being delivered, and the outpouring, and it was from everybody. It was from single moms who were coming and saying, "I bought one bag of diaper for my child, and I'm bringing you one." And we had groups, book clubs, and all these people started helping us. And I was just in tears for about 3 days. We didn't know what to do with all the diapers, by the way, because there were so many we had to sort and find a place to put. But I think the most wonderful thing that happened to me in that time was the way people care in Hong Kong. We sometimes think that nobody really cares what we do. We live in little silos in a way, and who's going to care if we don't have enough diapers? And it proved me wrong. And it was very touching, the stories from the delivery drivers and the people that came in, that walked into all of our facilities and said, "We want to help."
That's wonderful, because I agree with you. I don't know whether you have a similar thought, Ajmal, that sometimes we think that Hong Kong is very individualistic, but
Yes.
but actually Hong Kong people are very generous when
Yes.
They are absolutely.
Yes.
It's a very, very
Yes.
giving society.
Yes.
We might experience it in a very different way, but it's a giving society.
That's true. That's really touching story indeed. So now you have a warehouse full of diapers.
Yes,
That's a good problem
basically.
to have, right?
Yes. We certainly can't afford to buy it. So because of between the protests and the COVID, we have 80% more clients calling.
Uh-huh.
So we instead of saying, "Oh, we can't do it, there's too much for us," we're saying, "Let's do more. Let's do more." And so we're doing a lot more. We have 8 services now. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. 8 more services. Okay, now let me ask the participants here, the audience, do you have any questions? Do you want to know what 8 services that Mother Choice have? Okay.
What?
The 8 services.
Oh, the 8 services. Do you think I can remember? Okay, so we take care of young single girls. Our average age is between 12 and 20 or 19 or something like that. But we get girls as young as 11.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We get girls from all levels of society. So we do that. And what we're doing that's different from anybody else is that we really believe in choice, that girls should have a choice of what to do, and we are non-judgmental. So if a girl decides to parent, out comes, we have to train her. We have to make sure that she has a safe family to take the baby to. We do special programs on the 90 days after you give birth on how to take care of babies. We do a lot of training for the parents and grandparents who maybe haven't had any childbearing training either. We do a lot, because our girls are very young, we do a lot of sex education. So we go into schools, and in the old days, we would be given 1 hour to give 400 kids in an assembly the sex talk. And now we stick with schools, and we work with the teachers and the parents for at least a year, so that we're not only telling kids about sex, but we're telling the parents, this is how you deal with it. And so that's another big thing. So we do a lot of presenting in schools as well. We have our own foster care program, because the foster care system in Hong Kong is totally full. At any one day, there are about 600 kids waiting to be put into a foster care system. We really believe that family is the core. So we are really trying to train families on and helping families who are willing to take kids in. We do a lot of adoptions. We're our own adoption agency. I think I can say we do most of the adoptions in Hong Kong. We do a lot of volunteering. This is the other thing that really pleases me is that Mother's Choice has about almost 900 volunteers throughout all of the different services. And I think Hong Kong has really stepped up to the plate to help us. We wouldn't be able to do the work that we do.
Thank you.
What else? We take care of special needs kids.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So all of these services. Yeah.
That's a big job. That's a big
Yes.
job. And
Yeah.
yes, luckily that you have these all volunteers to help you. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question, Levi.
Oh, you have a question, Oscar.
Yes, actually, we wanted to ask you. We wanted to
Okay.
ask you because you're in our book, and we wanted to ask you some questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, okay, maybe we can. We're very informal today.
Yes.
So I'm gonna see here. So, you know, through our book, we have a quote. So, for every one of the stories, we have a quote that sums up actually the philosophy of life of a particular person. In your case, is there to be different.
Yes.
And through your story, you have been, I think, very inspiring for a lot of people in Hong Kong. How you came here and the type of things you did. So just can you share with us your journey in Hong Kong?
Well, my journey will not nothing compared to these two. So I don't want to share so much, but I think I moved to Hong Kong to be with my ex-husband. Move here, being a housewife, and then after 10 years, we split up, and I was working at the charity organizations. My friends used to laugh at me because like, oh, Davy worked part-time. You know, she earned 3 days a week and then she spent 4 days a week. At the end, she's even by the end of the month. Because it just, like working while I'm looking after the kids. I think, and then after, we decided to split up, I went to I decided to get the master degree. I still working in a charity organization. I end up work in three. I took 4 different jobs actually, 4 different part-time job, and master degree, because like as you mentioned, Ajmal, that like whatever life throws me, this is not the end of my story. I decide what will be the end of my story or how my story goes. So I took my master degree. And also, I think, I work at the Equal Opportunities Commission. It's never written in the book because my office is very sensitive about this kind of information. But one of the things I learned that job that helped, like I don't have to work 4 times 4 jobs, is that because, like I actively engage in the community discussions and things like that. And I don't mind to be the only person in the room that asks, difficult questions, maybe sometimes stupid questions. By being different, then people get to know me, and then I get information. Hey, the COC, looking for someone who can speak, ethnic minorities, because we have the law, race discrimination law passed in 2008. So that's when I joined. So nothing really special compared to you, but. There is a journey, and it becomes my passions, I think, to encourage people not to be defeated by circumstances, and not to feel that they have to fit in. Because if you try to fit in, then you will be the same with everyone else. But if you stand up and stand tall regardless of situations, then it will be easier for people to identify you. People remember you, and when the opportunity present itself, then it's very easier for people to remember you and invite you as well. So that's my story, no big deal. So sorry, so like, you are amazing, like I'm just Davy. So that's that. Any other questions you think? There's probably 4, yeah, okay.
Question for them.
Yes.
You mentioned that you do the project and then
Well, that's a question that we've been asked many times, because people are wondering, like, how come these people suddenly, without any affiliation at all, start working for 2 years with no salary into something for the society. So I think one of the drivers was this curiosity for knowing how many different nationalities are represented in Hong Kong. So people say, like, it's Asia's walled city, but okay, tell me more. Which are these stories of people from different places? And that's one of the magic things of Hong Kong, this cultural diversity, and also the perception as a foreigner coming to Hong Kong that there's a gap between the local and the international community in Hong Kong, and we could do something to bridge that gap a little bit. So sometimes you don't have to make a really big, huge difference, but a little bit you can contribute to make society better. Then it would be something worthwhile to work on. And along the way, I mean, we got a lot of good things. We met a lot of people. We got very inspired by all of these people, the volunteers. Many of them are here with us, and we learn a lot about Hong Kong, about ourselves, and about the world as well.
I think for me, because as a local and growing up in Hong Kong in a local school, I didn't really have a lot of chance to talk to foreigners. Usually I see them in Hong Kong Island or maybe in Tsim Sha Tsui, but I never really know about the story. But right now I'm working in a social enterprise to do cultural education. So in the past few years, I have met so many people from different countries stay in Hong Kong. And I found that they have a lot of very different, interesting stories. I meet domestic workers who have special stories, refugees, and people in Africa that I've never, like countries that I've never heard of, and I felt so ignorant about it. And I feel like this kind of stories I should share to my peers and like to the younger generations, because I see a lot of students, whenever we bring people into the school, they are always very curious. It's just that we don't really have a chance for them to meet them and talk to them. So for me, I believe that if we have a place to have a dialogue, like a safe space to have a dialogue, is a great thing for people to understand and respect other cultures. And I think a book is also a good medium to start with. From photos, people see that, oh, they look different, but their stories, some of them are very relatable. We have similar stories, but but they look different. So maybe next time when I look at this person, I can have some topics that I can talk to, or I know. So, and then I met Oscar, and then we said, okay, let's do this. And and then now we are in Asia Society.
Yeah, well done. Great job. So Zamira, you have questions.
I have a thank you for the sharing. By the way, I have a question for Ajmal. Actually, you hear a lot in Hong Kong about the experience of ethnic minorities or South Asian people, and you hear not as much, but also a lot about people who are have different abilities. But I think you're one of the few people out there in sort of people speaking out in platforms like this who can speak to the intersection of that. And I'm curious to know about your experience. You've already kind of mentioned this quite broadly, but just more specifics about some of the challenges you've faced as a differently abled person of color. What are some of the challenges or misconceptions? Has that changed? Has that improved? What does that look like for you?
Thank you. So it's an interesting question. It takes me back because it takes me back all 28 years, like throughout my experiences, which I have accumulated and I've gone through in Hong Kong. So I've been through different stages of Hong Kong also, and I have had different experiences at different stages, both of different stages of Hong Kong and different stages of me growing up in Hong Kong and my own growth in Hong Kong. And they have sort of, it started off being very negative, and it comes to the point that it's become very positive. Okay, so I can share. So when I came to Hong Kong, I mentioned earlier. So I was at a point in my life where I was just looking for change. My parents used to live in Hong Kong, so I came to visit them because I didn't know what to do at that point in life. I just finished one job and I was looking for another job at that time. And not even a job, I was looking for what am I going to do next? And that's how I came to Hong Kong. And I think that's a story typical with many people who come to Hong Kong. But that's the time I also, just for information, I'm an ex-army officer from Pakistan Army. Okay, I was injured in Pakistan, and just before coming to Hong Kong, I was living in Germany. So I gave up everything and I came to Hong Kong. When I came to Hong Kong, I sort of fell in love and I forgot to go back to, sort of gave up going back to Germany. But that's something where my journey started in Hong Kong, whereby I realized that, okay, I have all these ideals about Hong Kong. Hong Kong is such a vibrant place, and instead of living in Europe, I need to live in Hong Kong, and I need to make my life here. But I very soon realized that actually Hong Kong is a very unwelcoming place for a person like me. And especially I'm talking about early 90s, okay? When the whole idea of accepting a person with a disability was almost non-existent, not only in Hong Kong, but worldwide. It was, in some Western countries, it was slowly becoming the thing, but in Hong Kong, definitely no. So I can tell you that my experiences that time were very different. I used to go for job interviews. I used to apply for a lot of jobs. I used to go for a job interview. And the minute they saw me, they would not even let me inside the building, or not even let me inside the office, because the minute, oh, you applied for a job? No, you're in a wheelchair. You're from the subcontinent. Go away. We don't want you. And I've also had experiences where I applied for a job and I finally ended, after thousands of applications, I did end up getting a job. And eventually, after a lot of, so that's a lot of hard work also being rewarded in Hong Kong. So I can't say just from the job point of view or from getting started in Hong Kong, very difficult. But then when I started putting a lot of hard work, it was rewarded also. I ended up becoming the group CEO for one of the big companies in Hong Kong. And actually, that was another achievement for me, what I did in Hong Kong. That's a long time ago. And then eventually, I started my own business. And I went, so all these things are stepping stones for me, the way I put in the perseverance, the hard work, and continue doing what I was doing. And I slowly realized that, yeah, it's a tough place, but the minute you get to a point where you can, for a person from my origin and from my disability, but when you get to a point that you can actually prove that you have something to show for, you have done something, Hong Kong is a very accommodating place, and it's a very welcoming place. And the minute that happens, actually, Hong Kong gets around you that, okay, we need to give you more, push you up. And yeah, so a lot of things have happened, and I tell people, especially from my ethnicity, and that you need to work hard, work very hard, because opportunities are everywhere. But you need to grab those opportunities, and the minute you grab those opportunities, you need to put in a lot of hard work to make sure that you can sustain that opportunity, and then you can actually get to the point that you are different in what you're doing. And that's to your question, so that's something I believe. And I think there are a lot of opportunities even for ethnic minorities like me, and even for people with a disability like me, but it's just that you have to get around it, and you have to work hard, and Hong Kong rewards accordingly.
Thank you, Ajmal. Any other questions? No? Okay. Now, can I have follow-up questions on that, Ajmal? And also for you as well. In how much do you think this, like when someone keep telling you like, oh, let's say when we talk about ethnic minorities in Hong Kong nowadays. So when we talk to like, oh, they're not speaking Cantonese, la 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 la, they cannot find a job, they're not blah 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 blah. How much do you think this situation is actually due to the fact that possibly we as an ethnic minority, we actually buy into that stereotype that placed upon us, and therefore we react to it and we react accordingly, basically. So, like if someone says, like in the school, like this is what we've heard through work, people in the school, the teacher will say, oh, there's no point for you to study hard, you will not enter university. So then the student will think, well, yeah, maybe, like there's no point for me to work hard because then I will not enter university, and then therefore their progress is stagnant. So How much do you think the possibility of this happen, and what do you think we should do differently? I mean, you said, work harder and things like that, but how do you overcome this stereotyping that people bombard you every day, day in and day out? That's for you. If you can start, and also you, Phyllis, later on.
So this is actually I can say that strangely enough I would have positions on both ends of this. Okay, so of course, when you come to Hong Kong, just like belonging to a certain place, you need to immerse yourself in the local culture, and for that you need to understand if the language is different, at least make an effort to understand that language. Okay. And that's on one end of the spectrum. So what you're saying and what is being, it's a big issue in Hong Kong as well, that certain sort of jobs you can't get because you need to have proficiency in Cantonese. So from that point of view, I think I have to be very careful when I say this, but at the same time, it's coming from me directly that when we claim ourselves to be a world city, when we say that we are in par with, we need to make sure that we are more inclusive as Hong Kong. And of course, these jobs, typically the jobs you're talking about, they're government jobs which require you to have proficiency in Cantonese. And from that point of view, at least that gives a good bearing into the cultural understanding of Hong Kong, where at the same time, Hong Kong, in its old drive of being a world city and inclusive place and all that, needs to make some concessions that, it's okay, because we are a place where we're a melting pot where so many different nationalities do come in. You take Singapore, for example, they have different languages as well, but it's not mandatory. Yeah, so that would be my take. That's what my take. And of course, you said that hard work. I talked about hard work, and in the corporate sector, in the sports side, and all that. Of course, that works. That's the magic formula. That's what works.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the government jobs and all that, first of all, I'm not qualified because I do not have that sort of exposure. But at the same time, I can tell you that now, at this point in time, I do sit on some government committees. They never ask me, hey, you don't know Cantonese. Okay? So it's just a matter of where you are and how you get to a point in life. But those rules, if they can be broken, somebody who has been invited to sit on a committee or government organization has to be somewhat in line with the grassroots people who are trying very hard to get into a government job as well. So more inclusive has to come. Government has to be more inclusive. That's my opinion.
Okay, thanks, Ajmal. So let me tweak my questions for you a bit, Phyllis. So how do you see these young teens, how do they build up the confidence? Because like for ethnic minority, people think, like you are ethnic minority, you don't speak Cantonese. But then for the same questions, if you think about teen mothers, how do you build up their confidence so that they can go back to the society and become the contributing part of the community?
Yes, I'll tell you, there are many prejudices in different forms. It can be racial, it can be your status, it could be a young teen mom, which is not acceptable to the parents. I think the key for us is how to give hope. Hope then helps change lives. And so when we work with our clients, it's more that we know that coming around as a family is what gives kids hope and ambition to do better. And so many of our families are broken. And so we have to create families for these young girls and the babies as well, and give them hope. And once you have hope, then I think you can succeed. Once you know that you're accepted, that you can do better, and people come around you, I think that makes a really big difference.
Okay, so I think that's similar to Ajmal, right? Like the government have to give us hope for the ethnic minorities and more open up, and to build the inclusive society, and also for the families, we need to create embracing and create a family that actually embracing the young teens so that
Yes.
they feel they're part of the society and they
Yes.
don't feel less than any others. Thank you.
I want to, because Phyllis, you were mentioning earlier about your daughter, and we had a conversation the other day, and I was so inspired by something she said about the concept of extended family. So the moment that you are in a community and you feel like your family is much bigger than your actual family, and you consider people around you as a family, then things change.
Yes.
And I think that has been one of the core things about our project, because I can tell every one of you, you became in a way our
We
family
become your
as well.
family now, so can we crash at your place?
So I mean, we're running out of time a little bit. There are some other heroes in our audience, and I'm going to be a bit bold to ask them to come to the stage for a family photo, and also some of our volunteers that are here. So if you don't mind coming to the stage, and we can share this. So we don't have much more time. Maybe we can extend this conversation. I mean, you have our social media contacts. Our book is outside there, and. Yes, thank you so much, Debbie, for leading the conversation. Please, Abdi, Pete, Samira, all of the volunteers, please come to the stage and let's take a family photo. I wanted to conclude a little bit with, okay, this is our project. We have been working on it for 2 years. And so how can you help? Like, how can you support our project? There are many ways. Please come. Here, it's good. So different ways of supporting our project could be to talk to your network and share about us. Maybe volunteer for our project. Maybe sponsor from your company. Or maybe just suggest somebody else that should be featured in the book, and it's not. We're going to have probably a second version with completing the 150 nationalities that are represented in Hong Kong. So we have we have here all the families and volunteers: Pete from the UK, Samira from Bahrain, Abdi from Somalia, and all of the volunteers. Roy was taking Ashmal's photo. Bradley was taking Phyllis' photo. Ivana, that is taking photos now, who took David's photo as well.
Who's going to take photo then?
Oh, I think they have a photographer.
Okay. So we have to.